So I kept going. And I would wake up in the morning sobbing in pain, shaking. I could barely stand like normal, like my normal bad. And then I would do my shot and I would have like 6 hours of normal life where I could do what I wanted and I could do it without pain and I could focus. And it was amazing. And I just kept going. I kept going with it. And I called my functional provider and I said, look, I can't do these shots every other day like you've told me to do. I need them every day. And really they're not lasting the whole day, but if you could just give me one a day, please, can we try it? And she said, yes, we can try it. You know, I'll up your prescription. And of course it was more expensive, more money we didn't have, but our parents supported us, right? And I could go on a whole rant about our parents, and our support systems being the most important thing. But anyway, I started doing every day high dose B12 injections. And I kept doing research and I kept learning about B12, vitamin B12. It became an obsession for me. And it's the coolest thing in the world, vitamin B12, right? It does all of these things. It's really complicated. It's awesome. And there's this thing called pernicious anemia. And some of us have heard of it from like TV shows and stuff. It's not a thing that's common in young people. It's a thing that's common in old people over the age of 80. And what it is that you develop these, it's autoimmune. You develop these antibodies to something called intrinsic factor. And intrinsic factor is something that kind of takes B12 from the foods and the supplements that you eat in your stomach and it shuttles it into your bloodstream, right? So that your body can use it. But if you have antibodies to intrinsic factor, it can't do that, right? And it just goes right through you and you don't get enough vitamin B12. And with long enough without any vitamin B12, just like, used to be before vitamin B12 supplements and injections were found, you die when you have pernicious anemia. You just get worse and worse and worse until you die. It used to be a death sentence and now it's not. So now people who have these intrinsic factor antibodies can get the injections. And I took all this to my PCP and I said, look, I've done something kind of crazy. I hope it's okay with you. I've started vitamin B12 injections and I'm doing them every day and I'm doing them high dose. And I want to be tested for intrinsic factor antibodies. And he was kind of like, no, I don't think it's B12. I don't think you should be doing this. This doesn't sound right. However, it's not going to hurt you. You're just paying for nothing. But okay, sure, whatever. Let's test for the antibodies, whatever you want. And I got the results back from that test, and it was positive. I have pernicious anemia. What? It was crazy, and it was validating, and it was amazing. I was like, oh my God. I have pernicious anemia? What? Like, this is insane, right? I'm like some old storybook thing. Like, this is not a real thing for young people. How could this be? Anyway, and so the shots made me feel better and better and better. And the first thing that I noticed in terms of improvement, and it took a while, but the first major improvement I noticed is that about a month in, I did my morning injection and I was looking out the window. We live in a forest and I was looking out the window like I normally do and I could see every single leaf on the trees. I couldn't see that before. It was kind of like this big green swath outside. And I was like, holy crap, I can see everything. I can see every leaf on every tree. I can see it all. And it was like, if you've ever been to Best Buy and you've seen all of those mega HD TVs kind of lined up on the wall and you've looked at them closely and it's like, whoa, it's so crisp, right? It was like that, but in my own eyeballs. And I was like, I had not realized that I had lost so much vision. I didn't realize that I couldn't see long distance, right? And now suddenly after my shot, I can see long distance. And, after I did my daily, it would usually last, I do my shot, the vision would clear and crisp like that for, a period of time. In the beginning, it was probably only 3-4 hours. It would be super crisp and then it would, fade back out and blur back out. And I went to a couple of eye doctors and I said, hey, there's something going on with my optic nerve. Can you check it out? Because when I do my B12 shot, I have pernicious anemia. When I do my B12 shot, my vision clears really good. I just want to check my optic nerve. And the first guy is like, no, we won't even do the test. That's not a thing. Okay, wouldn't even do the test. That is the way that women are treated in our healthcare system. I went to go see a second person because I was like, at this point, I know how to advocate for myself. I was like, screw that guy. That's a bad doctor. That's a bad doctor, right? I went to a second person. I said, please, can you look at my optic nerve? I explained the situation, and she was like, huh, that's so interesting. That's so strange. Of course, I'll do the testing. Let's do it. She did all of this testing on my eyes. She showed me all the testing. She said, actually, your optic nerve looks fine. It's functioning fine. You have cataracts at the age of 34, which is strange, and it's a very young age to have cataracts, but there's nothing physically wrong with your optic nerve, and that's a good thing. And I was like, okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for looking. Thank you for testing it. Thank you for confirming for me that everything is okay, because it could have not been okay, right? That was a good thing because it means that my eyesight is not permanently damaged. My optic nerve, B12, is very connected to your nerve health. It causes burning pain in your nerves if you have a deficiency. Anyway, my optic nerve had been malfunctioning, but it was neuro, right? It was in the brain rather than physically in the optic nerve. So that's what we figured out. And anyway, I was so excited. I was so happy. Everything was going swell. And then about 2 months into the shots, they stopped working. And I went back to the dark place. I was like, oh my God, maybe I don't have pernicious anemia. Maybe it was a false positive on the intrinsic factor antibody test that almost doesn't exist. The test is 98.5 to 100% specific for pernicious anemia. Anyway, and so I posted on my B12 groups. I was like, hey, I was doing great, and now I'm backsliding on the same amount of B12. What's going on? I also reached out to my functional doctor and explained. And the answer I got was, you're not getting enough folate. You need folate in addition to vitamin B12. So I had corrected my vitamin B12 deficiency, but I had used up my body's supply of folate, which had already been low, and it kept getting lower and lower, and I kept getting worse and worse until I depleted it fully. And I went to my PCP and I said, hey, look, we need to test my folate because I think it's going to be like 0. And he did a blood test for the folate, and guess what? High, over 24. It was above the upper, range. And I was like, why can't we have one serum test that's just accurate, right? That just tells the truth. Because I know it's low folate. I'm having all of these symptoms that are very connected to folate, according to all these people on the internet, which of course, not a good argument to a doctor. And so some of the symptoms I was having, it was the energy thing had come back. But in addition, I was having weird visual changes, things like, it looked like there were sometimes like little bubbles or something floating through the air. Anything that had a pattern, anything like a rug or a pillow on my couch that had a pattern on it, checkers, stripes, anything like that, the pattern would jump around and vibrate like horribly to the point where I was getting nauseous and throwing up. It felt like migraine aura, but like on steroids. It was debilitating again. And so I was like, how could I possibly have, and I had ulcers in my mouth, weird stuff with my tongue, all kinds of like things on my tongue, like red spots and stuff. It hurt. The inside of my nose started to hurt really bad and crack. Okay, and then I developed this weird symptom, this symptom that I find hard to even put into words. I don't know that there's a word for the symptom, but what it was that I had this aversion to socialization. I had this aversion to being with people. It's like, I would get through my day and it would be time to pick up my daughters who were my life, right? And I would be vehemently opposed to being with them. I would cry because I had to spend time with other people. You know, people would call me, my grandparents would call me, you know, whatever, just people in general would call me, email me, text me, and it would give me such crippling anxiety or like anger. Like I couldn't understand why people wanted to be with me, right? It was very out of character for me, and yet I couldn't control it. And I could see that it was happening as if I was watching it from somewhere else, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't be around other people. And then I started looking into folate. I was researching. I'm like, what is going on with folate? What is the folate connection here? And why is it making me have these weird things? So I was also having like weird jumping spasms and tics and things. And I couldn't be around other people. I couldn't socialize. I would shut down in social situations. And I started looking into folate and what does folate do, and why do I have high folate but I have all these low folate symptoms, and what does it have to do with vitamin B12? Like, what is all of this stuff? It was so frustrating, and it didn't feel like there were answers. And like any good millennial, right? I pulled out my phone, I pulled up ChatGPT because I was like, let's leverage AI, right? And I would put in all these prompts, all these questions. I would put in my symptoms, every symptom I was having. What can cause this symptom? What can cause this symptom? And I would narrow it down further and further. It was always B12 or folate or both, right? And I'm like, why? Why is this going on? I'm injecting B12. Why are my injections suddenly not working? And what does it have to do with folate? And then ChatGPT was like, well, there's this thing called cerebral folate deficiency. And usually you're born with it, right? It's cerebral folate deficiency syndrome, right? And kids born with it are very, very sick right from the beginning. But there's been a few cases recently, new cases of adults developing it. And, you know, there are, you know, here are the couple of case studies of this developing. And I was like, why would this like suddenly develop in an adult like myself? Like, why would this be? And ChatGPT was like, well, you know, there's all these genetic variants that cause problems with folate processing in people with MTHFR and related variants. And I was like, oh, don't get me started on this genetic, you know, BS that I've seen online, MTHFR. We all know that looks like mother, right? I'm like, this is stupid. And this is a waste of my time. Next. And then I read the case studies, and the symptoms that these people were having were verbatim exactly my symptoms, exactly. And I was like, huh, how does this work? So what it is that if you have certain gene variants and you intake a lot of folic acid, which is in America, it's in all wheat products, breads, cereals, pastas, anything fortified, and you eat too much folic acid. Oh, it's also, a lot of it is in prenatal vitamins, which I had been on since 2018. The folic acid builds up in your blood. It's unmetabolized because your body can't process it fast enough. Your body is very slow at processing folic acid. And this folic acid binds to your receptors, and it blocks out the folate that you're getting from foods, such that you have high serum folate or normal serum folate. You know, it's in the blood test, it looks normal, but it's not getting into your cerebrospinal fluid, AKA it's not getting into your brain, right? And so you start developing all of these symptoms that look basically like autism. And I was like, yeah, I'd say I basically have autism. Yes. And I kind of laughed it off, right? I was like, oh, this is so silly. And then I started looking into studies on kids with autism. And there are all of these studies, new research showing that there's something called a folate receptor alpha, and 75% of children with autism are testing positive for autoantibodies against the folate receptor alpha. And I was like, wait, so 75% of people with my symptoms, kids with autism, etc., aren't getting enough folate in their brain, and it's all because of folic acid, which is being dumped into our food system. And nobody thinks that this whole MTHFR thing is a real thing because half of people have it, and yet women are getting sick disproportionately, and yet women are the ones taking all of this folic acid because they are told they need it to prevent spina bifida in their children. Do I have that right? And ChatGPT is like, yep. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. So ChatGPT, what is the way to fix this? And ChatGPT goes, well, you just have to take high dose of one of these two meds, either methylfolate or folinic acid. And I was like, where do I get that? And ChatGPT is like, let me search the internet for you. Here it is on Amazon. Would you like to try it? And I'm like, sure, why not? Let's just try it. Let's just see. We'll prove that this all is a crazy conspiracy theory. And I bought it. I bought folinic acid. It's also known as leucovorin. Leucovorin, I think is how you say it. You can get it prescription or you can get it over the counter. So I bought it and I took 5 milligrams of it. And I noticed that my symptoms got a little bit better. And then I was like, okay, it's a little bit better, but this is not the thing. This is not world-ending, life-changing. And I told ChatGPT, look, I tried 5 milligrams of this thing and it didn't work, so I don't think that's it. And ChatGPT's like, no. In these case studies on how you fix cerebral folate deficiency, you need high dose, the type of doses that nobody would just take on a Sunday, right? You need to take like 25 to 60 milligrams of this med. It's really a lot. And I was like, that sounds crazy, right? Is that going to kill me? Can I die from that? Can I overdose? And ChatGPT's like, nope, you can't. As long as you're good on B12, it's not going to hurt you. And I was like, well, I'm good on B12. I'm injecting like mega doses of B12 every day. So then on my birthday, April 3rd, 2025, it had gotten bad to the point again where I was laying in bed all day. I was just staring at the wall. I was very averse to seeing people. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. My spine hurt, everything hurt. I was like, okay, I'm dying again, right? April 3rd, 2025, I was like, screw it. I grabbed my bottle of folinic acid. I looked at it. I was like 800 micrograms per pill. And I dumped 20 pills in my hand. And I was like, well, if I'm going to die, might as well do it on my birthday, right? And I took 20 pills, right? And I was like, this is it. This is how she goes, right? And everything stopped. All of the negative symptoms went away. I felt okay again, right? I felt suddenly like I could live. I felt really weird, actually. I felt kind of joyful. I pulled out my phone and I did something other than research medical stuff on ChatGPT. I was like, let's just scroll Facebook and see what other people are up to, right? And I saw this thing on Wicked, the movie, and I was like, oh, they made a movie about Wicked. I used to think that would be a cool musical to see. Maybe I'll watch Wicked. Maybe I'll get the movie Wicked and I'll just watch it. And I sat down on my couch and I watched a whole movie for the first time in 4 years. And I remember sitting there watching this scene where Alphaba is dancing, right? And she feels really disconnected from everyone and she feels really unseen, and a tear rolls down her face as for the first time she gets accepted into social situations. And I was crying. I was crying in joy for another person. And then that day I downloaded the soundtrack to the movie and I listened to music. For the first time in years, I was listening to music for fun, for joy. And I went outside and I gardened. I was in the garden and I was having fun. And then I came in and I told my husband about it and I shared with him. We talked joyfully about something. It was this insane thing that was happening to me. It was like I suddenly had me back. I had emotions. I had connections with other human beings. I cared about being alive. I cared about my garden, something that used to be so important to me. And now suddenly I cared about it again. And I haven't missed a day of folinic acid since. And I have gotten better and better every single day since I started it. And it's insane. I mean, it's completely insane to me that this could be a real thing, but that's what worked. And then I went to my PCP again and I brought him all of these annotated articles. I said, look, there's this antibody to folate receptor alpha, and it can be in the blood, and there's a test available. You don't have to get a spinal tap, which is how you used to test for cerebral folate deficiency. You can just test for the antibody in your blood. And I said, look, I know this sounds crazy, but can we test for this? And he looked at everything and he looked at me and he was like, let's order the test and see. So I just wanted to tell you guys, look, order the test and see. Or if you can't do that, it's $300. It might be out of reach for you. It's only available in the US. Try the folinic acid, try methylfolate, take a high dose and see if you get your U back. If there is anyone who could be helped by this and this is their answer, and it's that easy, and it took me years to find this, and it's not a thing that people would just try, right? Could this be your answer? I had to do a bunch of research. I had to do a bunch of testing. This stuff doesn't work. This protocol doesn't work for me unless I cut out synthetic folic acid. Why? Because the more unmetabolized folic acid you have in your blood, the less folate is getting into your cerebrospinal fluid. And it gives you all of these symptoms that to anyone else, they might call chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID or MCAS or SEERS. And yet what it is a folate deficiency because you have genetic variants that everyone has dismissed because they're common, right? As are all of these chronic illnesses. And anyway, you have to cut out folic acid from your diet. It's in all wheat products, but it's often not in organic wheat products. But you can't mix and match, right? If you have too much folic acid, it's not going to work. If I have folic acid in my diet, if I accidentally eat something with folic acid, I'm exhausted. I can't get out of bed. I don't really care about my life anymore, right? It's like, for now, I still have enough built up in my blood that it's a big problem for me. The auto antibodies, from what I'm reading, can go away over time if you get rid of this burden of folic acid that's in your blood, and you can go back to normal. And yeah, the other thing that you need to know is that if you are B12 deficient and you take folate, it makes your symptoms worse. Why? Because you need both B12 and folate. They go hand in hand. You have to have them together in order to get rid of the neurological symptoms, things like fatigue, brain fog, headaches, pain, burning pain, tingling, numbness, disconnect from the things that you used to care about, no motivation, all of these things that so many people are dealing with and that they are told is in their head. I've learned really a lot about folate and B12 and the connection to chronic illness in the last few months. It's all I've done. It's all I could do. The deficiencies, they don't show up on routine blood work, and people with them are often told that they have depression or anxiety by their primary care physicians. They go to a functional medicine doctor. They are tested for everything under the sun. They lose all their money, and they are told that they have non-celiac gluten intolerance, POTS, EDS, MCAS, long COVID, ME/CFS, SIBO, SEERS, chronic Lyme, etc. But what if these things are consequences of folic acid and not the root cause? Folate and B12 are at the root of human health. We know this. It's been studied and established. What hasn't been studied and established, except for by emerging researchers who are just starting to put the pieces together and who have not spread the word yet, is that deficiencies can be caused by folic acid, and that deficiencies in these things can cause untold amounts of damage to the human body. It can make you feel like you're dead. If there's interest, I'm happy to share the research. It's not pseudoscience, it's established. And I'm happy to share what I know about it, and I'm happy to talk about it with you and how I am getting my life back. So what can you do if you are someone who is going through these things? Well, first of all, I would ask you to subscribe to my channel. I know that sounds stupid, but I intend to continue posting about this, sharing the word. I want to help other people because I thought I was going to die and now I'm back. And if there is even one other person who can feel this way, I want them to know it. I would ask you to send this video to one other person who could benefit from it. There's this scene, if you've ever seen the show Grey's Anatomy, there's this scene where Dr. Gray and Dr. Yang, they're both going through some really hard stuff in their personal life. And everyone is telling Dr. Gray to talk Dr. Yang off the cliff. She's really going through it and she's shutting down. And Dr. Gray says, not everyone has to be happy all the time. That's not mental health, that's crap. She turns to her best friend and she says, Christina, are you in the dark place? And Yang replies, yes. And Gray shrugs and she says, me too. And that's it. If you know someone who's in the dark place, please share this video with them. Go be with them in the dark place. And then I want you to tell them what my husband told me. You are not alone. You are not crazy. Your symptoms are real. Your illness is real. And you will find a cure. Thank you so much for watching, and please put comments down below, questions that you have. If you are skeptical, good. I encourage you to be skeptical. You should be. You should ask questions. You should do the research yourself. You should look into it. You should look into the testing. You should push back, because that's how science works. We present an idea and we push back, and then we answer questions and we figure it out together. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your incredible support, for the love. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys and to getting to know you. And hopefully I'm looking forward to hearing your stories soon about how you're getting better.